first event that we're having here in our new location that we just built. How do you guys like? Was it easy to find? Traffic wasn't bad? Traffic was bad, really?
Because we came in hour.
And we got really lucky, it's not raining today.
Yeah.
So this first event is going to be about nutrition. I think in the future we're going to have other events that are going to have a wide range of topics, including things related to pain, mental health, nutrition, and a variety of other off topics, which may not even include medicine, but some that definitely will relate to health and wellness. We've had our practice here since 2011, 2012. We've moved from Lomita to over here on Crenshaw, and then now over here, and hopefully this will be the last building. Ram Dandelion is another partner in our building, and he actually has a office in Beverly Hills. He's here 2 days a week, he's here 3 days a week. He's the chief clinical cardiologist at Cedars. So tonight we have Corry who's with us, and I actually want to screen it. She is a friend of mine. She is a professional athlete with the IFBB. She does a lot of work with the corporate health space. She obtained her master's degree in sports medicine from the United States Sports Academy and a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Colorado. She's married to a friend of mine, Ivan, and she's going to be speaking about nutrition, hormonal issues that surround our diet and health. If you have any questions, please definitely ask whenever you want. We're going to do a little recording during the talk here, but feel free just to throw some questions, okay? Without further ado, Corry Matthews.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here. So I had a quick question before we get started. So you got to know a little bit about me. One of the things I'll let you guys know, I talk with my hands. So I'm just going to tell you that. That's something that I do. If you try and hold my hands, I have a very hard time talking. So I guess it's just part of who I am. I am very passionate about helping individuals reach their goals by building healthier lifestyles. So I have been working in the nutrition and fitness industry for about 20 years, and I have found the uniqueness in that when people get healthier, what happens is they reach those goals, whether it's a job promotion, whether it's opening a business, whether it's a promotion at work, whatever it may be, that when we're healthier, we're more confident because we just feel better. So you all saw the flyer and you all ended up here tonight. So what I want to know is, what was it? Because I like to always make sure that I cover everybody's questions in the topics of tonight. What was it on the flyer, or what was it that you heard that you said, that's why I want to come tonight? And you guys can be just open and talk. I'm going to make you actually be engaged and work with me on this.
I've just been interested in, I've been reading in a paper about the metabolic rest, eating a certain number of hours during the day and rest letting your digestive stuff rest.
The good old IMF, intermittent fasting.
Yes.
Yes.
Daily
Okay.
fasting, I think.
Okay.
they call it. Yeah.
What else? Yes.
Maintaining your weight loss.
Okay. Maintain weight loss. What else?
Pain management.
Pain management and how nutrition helps.
Yep.
Anything else?
Hormones.
Hormones, yep.
Hello.
Good old hormones, right?
They don't get that piece back here.
Yeah. So no, actually, and the first part.
Well, maybe they do if they're married, yeah.
And the first part we're going to talk about is we're going to kind of, talk about hormones. We're going to dive into estrogen for a moment. So the guys are all going to go, yeah. They're not going to listen for a second. But I kind of like to always find out when we start a nutrition talk, how much people really know about macros. So this question's going to come later, because wouldn't it be nice if we had this magic ball that came down from the sky and said, this is how many macros you should be eating, your carbs, your proteins, and your fat, and this is how many calories you should be eating. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Because that's what everybody wants to know, right? How many times have you gone online and you're pushing that numbers into the computer and going, okay, if I weigh this much and I exercise this much, how many calories should I be eating to weigh this certain weight? So we all want that magic number. One of the things I am going to talk talk to you guys a little bit about is DNA testing for actually figuring out what your macros are. So I'll give you a hint, that's your very last question on there. So DNA testing can tell you exactly what those macros are. I'll tell you too, with most of the DNA testing that we've done with some of our clients, is that there's not anybody that fits that perfect keto diet or that perfect paleo diet. So it's really kind of different. So when they call all those diets fad diets, they really kind of are fad diets. So, okay, carbs, proteins, and fats for a second. Broccoli. What is broccoli? Is it a carbohydrate?
Proteins.
Both.
Carbs.
Okay, so why are we confused? Because carbs are bad, right? Carbs are the enemy and they're awful and they're horrible. So broccoli couldn't possibly be a carbohydrate, right? Because it's good for us. Well, a couple little easy ways that I'm going to tell you about this, just so that I will tell you there are some that fall in between. But any vegans or vegetarians in here? Are you a vegan or a vegetarian?
Vegan.
Okay. So when my vegans, when I start talking about this, they go, ooh, when we start talking about protein a little. Easiest way that I teach people to understand the difference between carbs and proteins and fats are carbohydrates are going to grow from the ground. So anything that is a plant and grows from the ground is a carbohydrate. For the most aspects of it, protein is anything with a face. That's where we get, you know, when you're a vegan, you're like, oh, I don't really like that. But there's lots of different ways that we can get our protein sources. So fat. Fat is going to be anything when we look at the macronutrients of a product is going to have more fat in it than it's got anything else. Peanut butter is a great example. So if we look at peanut butter, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is roughly going to have about 6 grams of carbohydrates, 6 grams of fat, and 16 grams of fat. Sorry, 6 grams of carbs, 6 grams of protein, and 16 grams of fat. So that's where you're going to end up with it being a fat. So when we first came here, so one of the things that we're always talking about is getting healthier and feeling better. For most people, when I talk to everybody, it's we want to lose weight. That's usually the #1 reason why somebody comes to a nutrition seminar is because they want to lose weight, right? So one of the #1 reasons that it's not about calories, it's not about calories in and calories out, it's not about how much you're moving, but for most individuals, when we are struggling with weight, it's because our hormones are out of whack. So I know that's one of the things that you guys mentioned is really wanting to talk about those hormones. So a couple of hormones to really kind of look at. So we're going to talk about the one for a minute. Guys, you all have a woman in your life, right? So you're all interact with a woman somewhere. So one of the big ones that we talk about is estrogen. Whether we are still making estrogen, whether we are postmenopausal, estrogen is ending up in our body, whether we produce it or not. So what we're eating is going to have estrogen in our body. So a couple of different things where we kind of are red flags for estrogen. If everything you used to do before that used to work no longer works now, it could be that your estrogen is out of balance. And so it's not working right, the receptors aren't working right. If we think about, how many of you eat red meat? Okay, so red meat is going to be the nutrition products that have the most hormones associated with them. So that is where you're going to find. Hormones like to carry along on fatty acids of the body. So it's the same principle for when we look at meat. So when we are taking the cattle industry, or we've got antibiotics, or we've got drugs, growth hormone, all of that stuff is going to directly fall right into that meat. So where we're going to find a lot of that is in that fatty red meat that we're eating. That's why there's a lot of research out that says eat less red meat, but we can start looking at organic, right? So how many of you have heard about grass-finished beef? Okay, so grass-fed cows, we're real aware of that. Anybody find how much different it tastes? Everybody seems to think it's, that was the most alarming thing for me. When grass-fed beef came out, the difference in the taste. Grass-fed beef tastes weird. And that's because everything that we've been eating has been conventional beef. And so grass-fed beef tastes really different. Now, one of the things to think about with grass-fed beef, we think we're doing so great, we're eating organic grass-fed beef. But, what do you think those cows are fed right before they're slaughtered? Majority of them are fed corn. So majority of them are fed grain and corn. So for the most healthiest aspect of it, and one of the biggest disruptors of our estrogen is our red meat that we're eating. So if red meat is really something that you want, I'm going to encourage you to do grass-fed and grass-finished beef. It tastes different. It's going to cook different. Everything about it is going to be different. Yes, it's going to be more expensive, but that's one of the biggest keys there. So a couple of things about estrogen dominance is so, a couple key things that if the estrogen is out of balance could be the inability to lose weight, which we just talked about, bloating and fluid. So if you've got a lot of water retention, that could mean that the estrogen is out of balance. Oral hormones, so if you're taking any kind of oral hormones, of course that is going to be putting artificial estrogen in you. This goes for the women, so breast tenderness, mood swings, if that PMS is really, really like it's coming and everybody goes, oh gosh, what's going on with her, could mean again that estrogen is out of balance. Also another sign that estrogen could be out of balance, and it's more that you're estrogen dominant, so there's too much estrogen in your body from the things that you're consuming. One of the things too that I always talk to people, you'll notice that my bottle is a glass water bottle, so one of those things that you can do is moving from glass water bottles from the plastic water bottle. There's a lot out there talking about the plastic and it's leaching into the water. So biggest key is if you have a plastic water bottle, the ones that you get, you pick up for an event or just the disposable ones, don't refill them. They're not meant to be refilled, and some people will still do it and they'll just keep using them again. They're not meant to be refilled because the chemicals that are used in making it can break down. Yep. So there's the first.
Metal cups.
Metal cups are great too. I think the metal cups taste a little funny. I can taste that metal in a fluid when I'm drinking the fluid, so it just depends on flavor preference, but metal is great, glass is great. Taking care of those bottles, it's just going to make sure that you're not increasing toxins into your body in any shape. So that's the one we're going to talk about. So we just talked about estrogen. So the next one, so I'll give you, so right there, so you've got number 1. So number 2, resetting your blank is the single most important action to lose and keep off excess weight. What do you think it is? Not the metabolism. It
Your
is.
weight set point?
It will affect that.
Oh, your insulin.
Your insulin. So number 1 thing that we can do to factor in that set point weight, to factor on your metabolism, is going to be resetting your insulin. So a couple little tidbits for your insulin here. Eating too many refined carbohydrates are going to increase insulin. And most of the studies out that we're finding right now is insulin causes us to be fat. So what I want to do for a second, I want to pay attention to insulin and look at it for a second. Most of the fad diets out there are some way, shape, or form, they are going to tell you what? Eat less carbohydrates, right? So when we think about insulin, it's regulation with blood glucose. When the insulin is coming in, insulin is going to affect that blood glucose, and blood glucose can go 2 different ways. It can be stored in your blood, so that's your blood sugar. And that's where you're going to use it, daily activities, anything else that you're doing. The other place that's stored, liver, muscles. So what it's going to do is it's going to change your glucose into a substance called glycogen, and it's going to be stored there. So we have these 2 different places where it's going to be stored. But what happens if those are full? So what if we eat carbohydrates with every single meal, and they're the refined carbohydrates? We're talking white rice and white potatoes, and we eat lots of sugar. So once this happens, so we can only put so many in here in the liver. So insulin is going to cause the glucose to go into liver. When this is full, what do you think happens to all that extra sugar and that extra glucose? Where does it go? It gets stored as fat. Glucose that goes into the muscles, what do you think it's used for? To move those muscles. If you're not moving your muscles every single day, you can't put any more glucose into your muscles. So if we are eating a diet that's high refined carbohydrates and sugars, and we cannot dump the glucose into the liver, and we cannot dump the glucose into the muscles, it's stored as fat. If you have too much running around in your system, the insulin elevates because it's trying to pump more in. So what happens is over time, your insulin comes higher and higher and higher, and we become insulin resistant. How do we reset our insulin, do you think?
Cut down on refined.
All sugars. All sugars. So we want to reduce fat and reduce our insulin levels, we've got to look at sugar. So challenge for you that I'd like you to do is look at what sugar is in. Sugar is in everything. So we do a regular detox where we do a hormonal reset. So it's a 21-day hormonal reset. So what we're talking about tonight is just a couple of those different pieces in it. So one of the big ones is resetting the insulin. So our hormonal receptors take about 72 hours to reset. So when we look at insulin and we challenge everyone to start looking at where sugar is, most people think, I don't eat cookies, I don't eat brownies. But when you pick up your salad dressing and you pick up your ketchup.
Strawberries and grapes.
Yep. So those are your fructose. So we're going to talk about those ones in just a second too. But if you look at it, there's sugar is in everything. Somebody recently said to me, I can't eat bread because there's sugar in it. Correct. So it's really looking at what products do not have sugar in them. So key there is to think about insulin. So if you really want to change your weight, and if you are set at a set point weight, there's a lot of information out there. We've got a really good article on our website about set point weight and how your body stays at the set point weight. And what happens a lot of times when we lose weight, if we haven't reset the hormones that go with that set point weight, your body wants to get back there. So you probably had it happen before. You've lost 10 pounds and you're feeling great, but you can't stay there because you're constantly hungry. And before you know it, let's just say that number was 150. You got it to 140 and you're right back up to 150. That is that set point. So the set point is going to be driven by the imbalances in our hormones. We need to take those hormones and change those hormones. So the next thing that goes with this one that we're going to talk about is leptin. So leptin is where we come into fruit. So there is the difference between being hungry and being what I call hormonally hungry. When you know you've gotten done eating, you know you're really not hungry, right? But that dessert is calling you, or you just want something else. I love it because you guys are smiling and you know it, because you feel it. But that's what I call hormonally hungry. When your body is saying, I want something to eat, but maybe it's not. So why intermittent fasting has become so popular is because of the fact that when we are fasting and we stop eating and take a break, we allow our insulin to actually come down. So elevated insulin is running through our body. That's going to be telling us, I want more, I want to eat more. We need to bring that insulin down. So years ago, we were pretty much set up so that we all stopped eating about 7 o'clock, right? Remember that whole myth? Don't eat anything after 7 p.m. That's how you get fat, because you gotta eat after 7 p.m. That was really, 10 years ago, that was intermittent fasting. That's exactly what we were doing. So the body is perfectly designed to naturally have a state where insulin is really low if you eat dinner and don't eat anything after dinner, and then you wait until the next day and you eat breakfast. You're actually allowing your body to fast during that time. So one of the things about fruit is fruit has fructose. So all fruit is sugar. That's what a lot of people don't understand is, a lot of times when I'm working with a new client and I ask them how healthy do they eat, I eat really great, I eat fruit all the time. The problem is with fruit, is if you're eating fruit by itself, what it's doing is it's raising the blood sugar comes back down unless you have something else to balance it. So one of the rules that I always use with my clients is that you can never eat a carbohydrate by itself. A carbohydrate has to be eaten with fat or protein. That's going to help balance out that blood sugar a little bit. It's going to have less of an insulin spike. If you find that you are constantly hungry, I encourage you to try giving up fruit for a bit, because it is not allowing our body to take a break. So when our leptin is imbalanced, what it does is it is constantly telling us that it wants to eat. When we reset our leptin, it gives us that opportunity to be, am I really hungry? Is my stomach growling? Do I really need some food? Do I feel a little lethargic and tired? Or am I just craving them? So when we think about putting insulin resistance and leptin resistance together, and those two, we find ourselves reaching and grabbing stuff. There's a lot out there, just a lot of myths talking about the fact that for the longest time we were eating 6 times a day, and that you needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours. There's a lot of research showing that we don't need to eat that way. Most of the people that I know that eat 6 times a day that are doing it really, really successfully are most of the bodybuilders that I work with. And it's because literally within 3 hours they are starting and they eat some more food. So that is the key. So looking at those two, so I encourage you to really look at how much sugar do you have in your diet. If you think about it, think about the premise of every single fad diet out there is cutting sugar. And I will tell you, every single diet will work. Every diet out there will work at some point, but you know what you gotta do? You gotta do it. You gotta do it, and you gotta do it the way it says. Because every diet gets out there that becomes a reality out there for people to look at because somebody somewhere has done that diet and they've had success with it. And it's usually cutting stuff out. But when we cut stuff out and then we put it all right back in, it comes all right back. And when we start looking at the insulin resistance, if we're still insulin resistant and we just stopped eating stuff for a little while and we lost some weight, we pulled some of the water out of all those muscle cells, then when we eat again, it's that rebound. And the hormones didn't get reset, and so sometimes we're gonna eat more. So any question with those three?
So to reset the hormones, it's the IMF, the sugar, getting the sugars out.
It's really a matter of, so when we do our 21-day detox, what we do is we have individuals given up for 21 days. So we do through a step-by-step process. So for the estrogen, for example, we will ask them to give up red meat. The other one that goes with that is alcohol. So, because if you, with the red meat, if your estrogen is out of balance and you have a lot of insulin running around, a lot of sugar, if you then put alcohol in, which is a carbohydrate and a sugar, then it just is very easy. If your insulin is elevated and your liver is already full of glucose, bringing in that alcohol makes it really easy to get stored. The higher those fatty acids are, the higher things are gonna get started. So from there, then what we do is the next step is we ask people to remove sugar. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, it's all sugar and all sugar substitutes. Because the research is gonna show you that if you look at sucralose, sucralose is gonna raise your insulin more than regular sugar is. So it's really pulling all of them out. Then from there, it's 72 hours and we reset there. Then we remove all the fruit and we stay there for 72 hours. So everything we do in a 72-hour increment for 21 days. Then from there, the real magic, I always tell people the magic is after the 21 days. It's really listening to your body because people always say, oh, well, I don't do sugar, so I'm gonna skip to the next one. And I always tell them, no, you're gonna hold. You're gonna hold and let that estrogen reset. We're gonna actually, really look at resetting the insulin, because usually then I tell people, go look at your salad dressings, go look at your ketchup, see what's going on. And so we go all the way through, and then the real magic happens is, did you pay attention to your body throughout the process in terms of how you felt? Because if you feel, and it may be, and I will say, my business partner has her PhD in holistic health and she lives in Virginia. One of the things is anytime we ever put together programs or design programs, we always test base all of the programs. We go through everything, we make sure that every single aspect of it happens. For both of us, we went through all the detox stuff, we thought it was great, and for both of us, the magic really happened in understanding truly what was the issue. So the next one, after we take all three of those out, and I know you guys are all looking at me, so the next one is the hardest one, was the one for me when I saw a detox and I said, no way, not doing it, not gonna happen, is caffeine. So, and this is what I will tell you. Anytime I've done a detox with anyone that I've ever worked with, the one that you sit there and go, I'm not gonna give it up, I promise you that is the one you have to give up. You have to give it up and give your body a break to see what happens.
And why caffeine?
So caffeine is cortisol. So cortisol levels. So when we talk about cortisol levels for a second, and I made sure that I wrote this down because I love my coffee. You guys all saw me, I was drinking my coffee when I walked in here, right? So, and it's not that coffee is bad. There's some really great studies about coffee and how great the antioxidants are in coffee, is that we are a society of too much. We don't get enough sleep, and so we rely on our caffeine. So we rely on that caffeine. And the key things is that having too much of it adds to our stress levels and causes sugar cravings. So if we're looking at causing sugar cravings, then of course it's just repeating that cycle of the hormonal imbalance. So what happens if we remove the caffeine is it allows us the opportunity to just see, is it a problem? Does it cause a problem? If you remove your caffeine and within the second day you immediately get a headache, yeah, it's probably a problem. And I will tell you, coffee isn't that bad, but what are you putting in your coffee? Sugar. Most people are putting in sugar, they're putting in cream, so it's really a matter of it. If you're drinking black coffee, awesome. Drinking black coffee, intermittent fasting, you can have your black coffee during that time.
Really?
But so, yeah. Anything that is calorie-free, that is not artificial sugar, you may have while you're intermittent fasting. Because it's not going to raise your insulin levels. So the biggest thing there with the cortisol is a stress hormone. So when we have too much, if our cortisol is elevated, what it's gonna do, and there's a lot of studies that show that cortisol elevation is going to lead to belly fat. And the most dangerous fat that you can have, right? I look right at the heart doctor here, is all the fat that's gonna be right around your midsection. Because it's right around your vital organs. If we carry it in our hips and thighs, that's a little bit better for us. But if we're carrying it right around our midsection, it's not good for us. So it's a matter of looking at, and for everybody when we talk about these hormones, you can go and get your hormones done, and your hormones may be normal. But what I have seen with working with clients is when your hormones are optimal, the way you feel and the way you look at life, it's so much different. And then you can have the occasional brownie, or you can have a couple glasses of alcohol a week, or you can have the wine. If those hormones are all firing the way they're supposed to, everything keeps moving the way it should. But when we don't follow the basic principles, then what happens is we continue to have issues. So the last hormone that I'm gonna talk about really quickly, you guys wanna guess which one it is? That goes with the grains? I bet you guys know what it is. The thyroid. So we started talking about all those. I was convinced for the longest time that I had a thyroid issue a couple years ago, and I went in, kept having me test my thyroid. No, your thyroid's fine, your thyroid's fine. Did a sensitivity test, a food sensitivity test, and found out, so most of us are removing wheat, right? My sensitivity is to corn. So everybody that gets rid of wheat and gluten, what do? They use corn to fill in, right? So if you have thoughts that your thyroid may be an issue, part of the detox is we remove grains. So we remove grains and see what happens to your body. So when we're doing this, what I'm asking all of my clients to do is step on the scale and see what happens. What is happening with your weight? Is your weight coming down? Is it changing? What does it look like? At the end of the detox, what we do is we say, what's the one thing you want to put in? So it's just like an elimination diet, but it's not as torturous as most elimination diets. And we look at, what is the thing you want? For me, I knew it was coffee. Very first thing I put in was coffee. Hallelujah, my body didn't react funny to it. I could have my coffee. But so that's where I say the magic is in listening to your body. Because all of a sudden, do you no longer have brain fog? Do you feel like you can see clearly, like you can remember clearly? A lot of people that have slight thyroid issues, but not enough to actually show up on a test, they have brain fog. They have inflammation in their body that they're not aware of. There's numerous studies showing that grains are going to cause sugar and insulin spikes. There's also a lot of studies that show the risk of heart disease with refined grains. So if you think about the most mass-produced, genetically modified thing that we possibly have on our planet, it's grains.
So we're removing sugars, we're removing grain, we're removing carbohydrates and protein. What do we eat?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So what do you eat?
Nothing.
So that's the next thing. So what are we eating? So if we are removing all of that, what it is it's protein, fats, fiber, and greens. For the majority of individuals, if your diet consists of protein, fats, fiber, and greens, you can have a healthy, sustainable diet, and you can help to get your weight in check.
What about dairy?
So dairy is another one too. My philosophy on dairy, for some people dairy works. The key is one of the things that, we are the only mammal on the planet that continues to consume milk past the age of being weaned. And it's not even our milk. So it's not even human milk. With dairy, if you're a dairy lover and you want dairy, I always ask that it's organic dairy. The biggest thing is with the cattle industry unfortunately, that is where there's probably the most misuse of animals, most animal cruelty, neglect. There's just a lot that goes on. There's so many antibiotics based on the way that they are, if they are in a stockyard, just the way the animals are treated. So when you start to think about it, milk from dairy cows, if you think about it, it is meant to grow a huge, huge animal. So it's really going to affect our growth hormone and what we're doing. So it's one of those things, that's why nut milks have become so popular as an alternative, because of the fact that when you start to look at dairy, I know when my kids were little, and my kids are 8 and 11, the pediatrician had told me, she's like, well, what kind of milk are you feeding your kids? And I said, well, we do organic milk. And she's like, okay, because if you can't afford organic milk, I really need you to have skim milk for your kids. And the reason why goes back to when I talked about at the beginning with the red meat, is those hormones are attached to the fatty acids. So if you're gonna have those, so when you've got that, that becomes the key. So whole milk is where you're gonna have more of those antibiotics with it. So that's the key there with dairy. But, so protein can be anything. So we can look at different types of protein. Protein can come from a vegetarian, a vegan source, or it can come from an animal source. So there's lots of different aspects here. So when we talk about grains and we look about getting away from grains, quinoa, for example, any of the legumes are gonna be very, very high in plant-based protein. So those are great options there. When we start talking about fats, so avocado. We live in California. We've got the lovely avocados. It's got some of the most saturated fat in it, but it's also one of the only fruits that has lots of really good fiber for us. So we've got all of the nuts that have become very, very popular. If you think about all of the olives that have become very popular. So, and olive is still a fruit, but when we remove fruit, it still falls in there. Fiber, so looking at all the different things that have fiber, either adding fiber to your diet, if you're eating nuts, if you're eating legumes, if you're eating any of the healthy alternatives to grains, you're going to find that it's got a lot of fiber in there. If you've tried any of these, so one of the times people will try and get rid of grains. So most people think of when they think of grains, they think about, I'm gonna get rid of gluten, I'm gonna get rid of wheat. There's nothing wrong with having wheat and gluten in your diet if it's okay for you. We've all become this, everything has to be gluten-free. If you're not intolerant, and if you don't have celiac disease, there's no reason that you have to give up wheat. I always tell people, I don't have a problem with wheat. I just know that if I eat too much wheat, it's gonna make me fat. So I only eat it once a week because I know it has that effect on me. But when I finally got my personal hormones right in an optimal range and realized how good it felt to be there, I didn't want to go anywhere else because it didn't, the taste of that food wasn't as good as, you know, the next day feeling the bloatingness or feeling the inflammation or feeling, you know, oh, my elbows hurt now, because when I ate optimally, it felt better. And I'll tell you, from being a professional athlete and being in the sport of bodybuilding, where we do severe dieting to get to a certain spot, you know, you feel that sense of, oh, I've got to eat this food because I'm never going to have it again. And so when you're dieting, then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to have it. But so it's really about finding really good food. So you can have, with this here, you can have a really great salad that's got olives and it's got nuts on it and it's got a really good rich dressing and maybe it's got a great piece of fish on it or it's got, you know, a great chicken or steak. You can go out and have, you know, chicken, fish, and you can have a sweet potato that goes with it, and you can have, you know, vegetables that are cooked in coconut oil and, you know, have some nuts over the top of it. So it's not about food that doesn't taste good or doesn't feel good on your body. It's about how do we transform that? How do we get our hormones back in balance so that we feel better? So one of the things with this that I did mention, with the genetic DNA testing, we do some of that. So what it is it's the science of looking at your genetics. And what do your genetics tell you about your actual macros? So what does your body say? If we look at all of our genes and we see how they're all put together, we can actually come up with, what does that look like? How many grams of carbs do you need? How many grams of protein do you need? How many grams of fat do you need? And it's been very interesting. We had a client, he was a bodybuilder, and I'll use him for an example because he was trying to get very, very lean. Very lean, and he was working with someone and he was following your traditional high protein diet, very, very low carbohydrates, very low fat, and that's typically what they eat. Could not get lean, could not get lean, could not get lean. And I said, you know, what if we tried your DNA? What if we looked at your DNA and saw what it said? He was a 45, 35, 15. So he needed 45% of his calories to come from carbohydrates. You don't do that. You don't do that in the CrossFit world. You don't do that in the bodybuilding world. We took his carbohydrates and we elevated his carbohydrates, and all of a sudden, the man that couldn't get below 10% body fat ended up at 5% body fat on carbohydrates. So it's really about listening to your body, seeing what works for your body, understanding understanding that and finding a nutrition balance that really works for you. So with this, I've given you guys a lot of information, so what I wanted to do is open it up for some questions. To see now that you have all this stuff rattling around in your brain, what are your questions?
What about pain?
About pain? So the biggest thing is with pain, is what I have found with my clients that I've worked with, is that nutrition truly can heal the body. What I found with, it's the inflammation in the body. So if your body is inflamed, it's gonna affect your joints, it's gonna affect all of your organs, so that inflammation is what is really elevating the pain. And so if you are suffering from pain, I always want individuals to really find out, what does that nutrition look like? What is the best nutrition for them? Finding out, are the hormones firing in the right aspect of them? Because the hormones are gonna circle through the body. It controls everything in our body is the hormones. So they're gonna be directly related to how pain is. And so it's really looking at that as inflammation. And
So the inflammation, but your output, since I'm just gonna use me, 2 knee replacements, I have back issues right now, and my output has drastically diminished. What do you do as an output when you can't do what you used to be able to do?
Yeah, so it's really a matter of looking at your calories, seeing what those calories are, but then it's also finding what does your body feel best on. So, if you were to look at what you eat in a week, what food do you eat that when you eat that food, you feel good? Like you feel energy, after the next hour, it makes you, I wanna go do something. So it's really looking at what is that food and finding those foods, because then that's where we're starting to figure out what leads to the inflammation and what can reduce the inflammation. And it's really interesting to see, because when I can get a person to reduce the inflammation in their body, their calories can come up. Because what's really happening is it's more of a, okay, I'm gonna give you this fuel and you're gonna burn the fuel. It's really about, if you think about the law of physics, and it's just, giving and staying in motion and keeping moving. Yes, obviously, if you are moving, it's gonna help. It helps with the insulin, it helps with the blood sugar. But if you're not moving, then we just have to find ways to make sure we don't have excess glucose sitting in the body and not being moved. Yes?
I had a question about, you mentioned doing away with red meat because of the hormones connecting to the fatty acids. Is chicken a better choice because it has less fat?
It's just that you're not gonna find as much overall use of all of the drugs that they use in the cattle industry within chicken. I also too always will recommend, if you can afford it, organic pasture raised. Go back to the way animals, if you're going to consume animals, go back to the way that they're meant to be raised and treated. So, I have a couple of my vegetarian clients, the only thing they will eat is eggs. And the reason why they will eat eggs is because what they do is, for some of them, they raise their own chickens. They know exactly how the chickens are treated, they know exactly how they're taken care of, what they're fed, and then it's eggs. So they feel like, they're not harming an animal in doing that. But, people are like, oh, vegetarian fed grain, chickens. Chickens are supposed to eat bugs. They're supposed to eat bugs and grass. They're supposed to be out on a field, and that's what they're supposed to be eating. So I want, grass-fed, pasture-raised animals. And there's a big difference too. If you look at the eggs, look at the difference of the eggs, you'll see it is a bright, bright orange. And those are gonna be the ones that are really good in essential fatty acids. They're gonna be good for your brain. So it's really about elevating food. When you start to eat food that is organic, all natural, pasture raised, you're gonna realize that you don't eat as much of it. So you find that food bill goes down a little bit, because there's not all these extra fillers and this other stuff on top of it. You're eating really good, clean food, and it just tastes different, and you start to feel better.
What about fluid intake?
Fluid intake? I generally like to say, if you can drink as many ounces as you weigh, that is the ideal. So that's an easy way for it.
What about overwater? Because that was my problem. I was drinking too much water, and they're like, that's why you're having all this issue.
Flushing all your nutrients out.
Yeah, everything was getting flushed out, so it was too much water.
Did you feel like you were constantly drinking water, or you weren't drinking very much water?
I was drinking like the 8 of the 8 ounces of water a day is what the doctor said to drink, and then it was like I went through the loopity loop, and that was my problem. I was drinking too much water.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So were you having foods that had sodium and potassium in them?
no, because I was on all protein diet.
Okay.
It was right after surgery, and I ended up in the hospital with swelled legs and everything because of fluid intake and too much water. So when you say drink as many ounces as you weigh, is that for everybody or is that?
It's gonna be, that'd be more of a general recommendation, but it's also, you know, if somebody came to me and said that they were doing just all protein, I would say we've gotta watch.
Well,
how
it
we're
was
doing that.
protein and grains, but it was an all protein diet because after surgery, that's, after all the medication was taken out and everything, that's all I could eat. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah,
And then the water, just the intake in the water, they were like, oh no, you gotta go down and do 4 ounces, 6 times a day. And I was like, okay. And then everything went back to normal, so.
yeah, I would say, and it depends, your body wasn't in optimal health in terms of where you wanna be, so it's probably optimal health, but I'm talking more of an ounce per pound. Every situation would be different, so we would definitely be looking at too. And then I would also, with that, I would have wanted to see what are your electrolytes? Like what are those sodium and potassium balances that actually keep it so that you don't retain as much water, and so you're actually sweating it out or peeing out the water. So it's all a factor of looking at all those different aspects of it.
When you talk about fiber, you know, some diets have fiber supplements, the low carb things. Is that all right, or are you better off getting your fiber in your food?
Anytime you can actually get it in your food is gonna be better than taking a supplement.
Yeah.
But supplements were created originally to supplement an already sound diet. So supplements originated because of the fact that they had athletes that couldn't get enough of all the nutrients that they needed, and so they had to figure out a way to get them those supplements, and so that's where they had. But if you can't get enough from your food, psyllium, fiber, just throw it in a shake.
Yeah.
Getting it in is definitely not gonna help. You know, this is my TMI information with clients. If you're having 1 to 2 regular, substantially like solid, good bowel movements a day, that means that you're actually moving the food through you. If it's really watery, you know, if it's diarrhea, then what it's showing is that you're not actually taking your food and actually processing it through you. So in that aspect, then it's a matter of looking at, you know, maybe we do need some fiber that's gonna help just kind of go along the intestines and pull it out.
Gotcha.
One of the things that you can do is white kidney bean is a great alternative to add. That's a great carbohydrate to put in there. It basically, I like to think of it as it acts like a little squeegee that goes down through the intestines and kind of pulls out all the junk that's in there. It also kind of buffers some of the carbohydrates too, so that one works really well.
When you talk about resetting the hormones, can you explain that more?
So it's really receptors in your body. So there's receptors in your body that are telling your hormones how to fire. And so when we remove the things that traditionally will cause estrogen dominance or insulin resistance, and we give the body a break from those, it allows them to basically, it's almost like life support, or if it's like, you know how on your computer, when your computer is just not working, it's just not working, and you just say, okay, fine, I'm gonna turn it off and completely reset everything. That's in essence what you're doing. There's so many hormonal receptors, and we're just giving them a chance to reset, almost like if you were to like take a defibrillator to them and just shock them and just say, okay, we need you to just reset so you can work the way you're supposed to work. That's what we're doing with them.
So how do you know when the hormones are in their right?
There really isn't a way to do it. It's either how you can feel, but the lovely thing is that we have amazing doctors here that can actually, you know, tell you where your hormones are and see where your hormones are. What I love about everything that I have met with these guys is that they have the same philosophy and belief that they don't want you to just be average. They want to take your life and they want to make you feel optimal. They want you to be pain-free. They want you to experience life. And that's where you really want. If you go to just your general family practice doctor, they're gonna say, yep, hormones are fine. You're normal. But what you want is you want doctors like these guys that are gonna say, let's get you here. Let's get you here and look at all of the cool stuff here. Let's look at, you know, the micronutrients. Let's give you, you know, shots of vitamins. Let's actually take this wellness to the next level as opposed to just, let's be content staying here. And so that's the key, because they have all the really cool tools that they can do that.
So no tests are used, diagnostic tests in determining the hormone?
It's really looking at blood tests. I don't know if you guys wanna talk at all to testing.
You
to
can
find-
measure all types of hormones, let me speak about depression. Let me speak about mental health. A lot of times when people are depressed, and especially if it's the onset first time, let's say a 35-year-old male, I'll order a panel and I'll actually look at testosterone to see if it's low. Because I mean, some things just shouldn't have. Then we look at diet. We realize that all of these things, the building blocks of hormones are what you intake, your food. I mean, things are, things that your hormones are made up of different building blocks, like amino acids and all the things that you consume. And it may be that there's been a diet change. It may be that the person's not absorbing something, and they may not be able to make the testosterone. So we look for the underlying reasons. So going back to the question, yeah, we can measure for testosterone. And in some instances, supplementing that testosterone will help. In other instances, it won't. So there are many ways to measure things. We just have to look at the reasons of why we're doing it as well.
Any other questions?
So Corey, I thought that was a great overview of different philosophies of diet. I think it's, as a cardiologist, I think we've always felt that kind of a plant-based Mediterranean diet seems to be most conducive to good heart health. But I would say that it's true that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's why it's very important to have a very customized approach to this. And I was wondering if you could maybe comment a little bit on the rise of some of these other types of diets, like ketogenic and now the carnivore diet. It seems like there's a diet for everyone, and it really depends a lot on your own research and your own goals when it comes to weight loss. But there's not a perfect diet. I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, we think in the cardiology world, the Mediterranean diet is good, but maybe you sacrifice other things and it doesn't work for everyone. But it's a very complex science, and there isn't a lot of rigorous data, unfortunately, with diet trials.
Right. Well, and I think that's what it is that you'll have a group of individuals that do one thing and it works really, really well for them. Keto is an example of that. I mean, it came out with Dr. Atkins, and now keto is coming back around. If you think about keto and the premises of keto, so much of the research recently has been that what we need to do is that we are, as a society, we are insulin resistant because of our refined carbohydrates. One of the studies that I was looking at is they went over to Asia, and they were looking at Asia, and they were saying, all they eat is rice. Well, why is it all that they eat is rice? Well, they don't also eat cookies and brownies or anything like that. And so their body works really, really well with the rice, and they don't get fat on the rice. But so when we looked at here as a society in America, what we're doing is we want to just decrease insulin. Well, okay, we know that if we reduce carbohydrates and if we reduce protein, because protein will elevate insulin, but fats are going to increase insulin the least amount. So let's just do all fat. But what's fascinating is in the DNA studies that we've done, and when I've looked at individuals and looked at their DNA, not any single person falls into any of those fad diets, but it's worked for someone. And so keto, and I'm scared to death that in 5 years we are going to find out all the terrible things that keto is doing to specifically our heart.
Wasn't that what happened with Atkins? And
It's
then
exactly-
it changed to keto, and now it's going to change to something else?
Yes, well, because it didn't come back as Atkins, it came back as keto.
Right.
And the thing is that I have met a lot of, colleagues of mine that they are doing a ketotarian diet. So I say ketotarian diet because truly if you are doing a keto diet, you need to be in ketosis. And you actually need to test either your blood or your urine to find that you're actually producing, what it means is you're producing ketones. So your body is using fat as a substance to burn. You can do a Mediterranean diet. You can do a ketotarian diet, which is going to be looking at good fats, good proteins, reducing fruit, reducing sugar, and eating fiber and greens. So you can do a diet along those lines. You're not in keto, but you're still having really, really good success, and you're getting results. That kind of comes back to what have been the longest standing nutrition platforms that you see. But again, it's the high protein, low carbohydrates, because at the end of the day, what most people are doing when we see fad diets is that they're looking at weight loss. That's it.
Quick weight loss.
Weight loss, yes. People will come to me and they will work with me and they'll say, I'm only losing a pound a week. And I said, that's fabulous. And I go, what do you mean? And I said, it's fabulous because 1 pound a week is sustainable. And you are learning new lifestyle changes so that when you're done with me in 12 weeks, you're gonna go, okay, great, I got this. I know what I need to eat, I know what I need to do. It's not gonna be, I'm gonna say, don't eat any of your carbohydrates, don't eat any sugar, I want you to eat all protein, and you're gonna do this for 12 weeks, and you're gonna lose 15, 20 pounds, and then what do you do? Then what are you left with? And so most of those fad diets that we're looking at, it's all about vanity. It's all about how we look. And so, you know, I think like what Dr. D is talking about is when we're looking at it more, they're looking at what is an aspect of the health risk factors.
A lifestyle versus
Exactly.
diet.
What is going to make your heart healthy so that you can live a longer, healthier lifestyle? Not, can I fit into these jeans on Saturday night? So that's really the aspects of what we're looking at it. And the studies that have all those long-term facts back behind it, it's the fact that they're hard. And so people want these fad diets because they really want them to work because, oh my gosh, if I could just eat just this, or if I could just eat bacon and potatoes, you know, pig skins and cheese and sour cream, if I could eat that all the time and be skinny,
It'd be great.
that's great. But what we're really not looking at is what is the long-term effect on our health? What is our health gonna look like? And so that's really why when you start looking at keto is the biggest one that's out there, paleo was the other one. I worked with high-level CrossFit athletes that were do or die, they were paleo. And this one athlete, such a high-level athlete, and constant headaches. And I said, for the love of everything good, could you eat a carbohydrate that's something other than fruit? Because I said, all you're doing is you're eating tons and tons of fruit. So because fruit is allowed on the paleo diet, you know, they were having pineapple for dessert. And I'm sitting there going, great, you've eaten this food and now you're just gonna have pineapple for dessert and your blood sugar is all over the place and you can't hit your lifts. And I said, please, I'm not asking for much of anything, but could you just do me a favor? Had a big meet coming up, I said, could you put in 2 sweet potatoes? That's it, 2 sweet potatoes. So it's still something that grows from the ground, you don't have to put anything on it, and the headaches went away. And it was because of the fact that all he was doing was flooding his body with sugar. And he needed something different, but he was so ingrained in his paleo lifestyle, and I can't break from paleo, that he wouldn't try something different, even though it was something that was very healthy. So,
You mentioned one thing too. You know, I think now we're at a time where we need to start looking at what the long-term studies show. We want to see what keto versus intermittent fasting does. We don't know what 5 to 10 years will bring for keto. I have a theory on that. I think we're going to see a lot of arterial damage, personally, but I could be wrong. I mean, that's what we have to see in the long-term studies. Just interestingly, have you guys heard of Bulletproof? Okay, so I actually went to college with Dave Asprey. We didn't know each other very well, but we hung out once in a while. And I do remember he was about 315 pounds or whatever, and he's really skinny now. So obviously these diets have worked for people, but what we have to see is what has it done internally? Yes, you've lost the weight. The other thing too is, remember, we're so focused in this Instagram society about looking good, image that we're trying to show, portray. What's the use of looking good if you're tired all the time? You feel like crap, you're depressed, okay? You hurt, you may be thin, you may have lost a lot of weight, but you just don't feel good. It might just be worth trading that 10 extra pounds to think a little better. So there's a trade-off to everything.
So we can sit out the line.
Maybe, exactly. I would say yes, okay.
We hear a lot about people to have a diabetic's lifestyle and eat what a diabetic needs to eat. Is that true? I hear that a lot. Eat like a diabetic, live that lifestyle.
are we type 1 or type 2?
Well, I mean, you hear them all the time, people, that's what they say.
Yeah, but I mean, type 1 and type 2 are gonna have very different,
Yeah.
what they need to eat is gonna have very different. I think it's just, the number one thing I tell people is if you wanna see a difference, really look at the amount of refined carbohydrates that are in your diet. Look at because there is enough concrete evidence that shows you know, with,
So,
yeah. Like, it's just a matter of, it's looking at, you know, all the white refined carbohydrates, and it's looking at the liquid calories that we're drinking. Is looking at those, you know, and put in some vegetables. You know, those are the things. The first thing I will do with a client is look at vegetables. Okay, let's look at your vegetables. How many vegetables are you eating? And then I say, what vegetables will you eat? Because that's the key, you know. I work with a lot of parents and children, and they'll come in and say, my child won't eat any vegetables. I can't get him to eat any vegetables. And I look at the parent and go, what vegetables do you eat? Well, I don't eat vegetables, but I can't get my kid to eat vegetables. Well, of course not. You're not eating vegetables, so why would they eat vegetables? But the key is right there. If I can just get you eating some vegetables, and if I can get you to reduce your overall consumption of sugar, it makes such a difference. And then if you take, you know, I've had clients come in and they're drinking 6 sodas a day. And you know, the first thing I do, okay, can we get rid of 2? Can we just get rid of 2 sodas? We can put in a sparkling water, or we can do something else, but just 2 sodas. Can I get rid of 2 sodas? And then gradually what happens is you just start seeing little tiny changes, and the person feels better. And they go, oh, you know what? I made it up and down the stairs and I wasn't as winded. Or whatever those little tiny things are. So, you know, when I start with a client and they have a meal plan versus a client that, you know, 6 months later and what they're eating, they're drastically different. But if I showed people what this 6-month plan looked like, they'd be, no way, I'm not doing it. There's no way I'm gonna be eating that. But if I can get you feeling better step by step, it makes such a huge difference.
You mentioned one thing too. So Deborah, you were mentioning about a diabetics diet.
Yes.
So let's talk about pain. We know for a fact, and we've spoken about it already, that sugar is the cause of inflammation, okay? The inflammatory markers in the blood just go way up, okay? It's about bringing down the sugar. Nowadays, that's defined as a diabetic diet. Way back when, that was just what you ate, that was diet, right? So we need to get back to common sense. I mean, everything we have, everything we eat nowadays has high fructose corn syrup. How many people here take metformin? Okay, so you know metformin brings blood sugar down. As you guys know, it's also kind of used as an anti-aging drug. So sugar promotes aging. Sugar increases depression. Alzheimer's. Now they're starting to look at beta amyloid plaques, which we always thought were the hallmark of Alzheimer's dementia, as being a thing of the past. It's actually, they really think now it's because of increased sugar. Isn't it, Bill, is it increased sugar?
Inflammation and via that pathway you just described.
Is it increased insulin over time, or is it actual microinfarcts? Or
It's sugar, oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress, sugar, yeah. So chronic exposure to sugar causes a lot of things that we treat over here.
I have kind of just back to a nuts and bolts question, the
Yeah.
core protein, fat, fiber, greens. What do you mean by greens? Because you talked about a sweet potato, that's orange.
Right. So greens would be anything.
just asking.
Anything green. Collard greens,
anything
kale,
green.
spinach,
Yeah.
Yep.
Salad?
salad. Everything and anything with salad is definitely, yeah.
But not iceberg lettuce.
Not iceberg lettuce, no.
What
But-
about green jelly beans?
No green jelly beans. No green jelly beans. But you know, if you do like iceberg lettuce, if you can take, again, same theory of adding a little bit, if we can take, my daughter is a great example of this. She only likes, you know, butter lettuce and iceberg lettuce, so I make a deal with her. Okay, fine, you can have half of that, but the other half is gonna be spinach. I said, and I love taking, for example, cauliflower rice. So, you know, getting people off of rice, if you take cauliflower rice and if you do half cauliflower rice and half whatever rice it is, a basmati rice, a jasmine rice that are nice and fragrant and flavorful, mix that together, you have all the feel of your regular rice, but you've now, all of a sudden you've added a vegetable and you've cut the carbohydrates down and you've cut down the calories. And so I started doing it with some of the meals for my kids, you know, just mixing it in because they don't understand. They at first thought I was giving them garlic. They thought it was all chopped up garlic. And I was like, I like garlic, but not that much. But there's different ways. But greens, anytime you can add greens into stuff, whether you can add it into soups, most smoothies, you can make a smoothie and add a whole handful of greens and you will never really taste the difference of the greens because you've got other stuff in there that's gonna compensate for it. But a great olive oil dressing, olive oil and vinegar on some greens, it doesn't have to be a low-fat, non-taste, you take advantage of really good extra virgin olive oil and put it in there on a salad. Great heart healthy. So at the bottom, you guys have my contact information. I'm gonna be doing more, so if you guys would like to do an individual consultation with me, if you'd like to discuss any of your stuff, I'm gonna be working closely here with these guys to make sure that, and offering nutrition plans, and also I will do some talks on nutrition and exercise, so if that's something that you guys want. But, please, we'd love feedback and, what you thought.
You sent out the email with the questionnaire. It came in the email today.
Perfect.
So do you guys, I noticed we talked about the DNA testing. Do you actually do the DNA testing here, or how does that work? I mean, what exactly, because you were just talking about like 40% protein, 30% carbs, 15% whatever.
So that is one that I do. That's the only test that I do it's based for health. It's a genetic health screen. That's the only testing that I do, and literally it's a thing that comes to you and you just swab your cheeks and send it back in.
And then how do we find out about that? Just through
Yep,
your website?
yep. You can just ask me about it, and then there's a lot of different ones on the market. The one that we chose to use is AGS. It's Advanced Genomics Systems, and the main reason why is because, and I'll just give you a heads up, if you go through 23andMe and you go through, make sure you check all 3 boxes that say that they cannot share your information. That's just the key. 23andMe has gotten in a lot of trouble for sharing information. They're very different genetic screenings that they put through. If you have done an AGF, or if you've done a 23andMe, we can convert it into our premium health and wellness screening. Our health and wellness screening is what it's looking at is, are there vitamins that you're deficient in? So, would you be a really good candidate for having injections for some of your vitamins? Are you not, are your body not absorbing them? We also look at specifically, what do your genes say? So when you look at your genes, and a lot of people say, oh, I'm fat because of my genes. 30% of how you look and everything about you comes from your genes. The other 70% is what you take from the information from your genes and what you do with it. How you eat and your environment and where you live. One of the things we can also look at too is looking at your exercise patterns. So it's looking at the DNA coding for your skeletal muscle, your bone density, your bones in general. Are you better with cardiovascular exercise? Are you better with strength training exercise? And looking at what those components look like for you and just seeing those aspects of it. So the one I'm doing is specifically related to health and wellness. It's not gonna be doing anything specifically chronic diseases or anything like that.
Because I have 3 autistic kids, and we've done the gene testing, like 8 years ago, and they're like, now they're telling me DNA testing, food testing, and they're all, and I'm like, and then when I sat there, he goes, wait until I talk to you, so.
Yeah, it's been pretty eye-opening in terms of looking at it. For example, because we test everything, I tried keto. I became deathly sick with keto. And it was at the end of it, after 4 weeks, I was at a conference, and I was in the fitness facility in the conference, laying on the floor in the bathroom, thinking I was gonna call 911 because I was so sick. And it was because I had worked with a very good friend, very science-backed with the, how keto goes and the carb cycling of keto. And every single time we did it, I just got sicker and sicker with the keto flu. And, sure enough, when my DNA came back, I am a 40-30-30 split, which I actually have one of the highest fat categories. So if anyone should be able to handle a keto diet, it's somebody with that split. And I was a great example of not. And for me, it was a red flag because I have severe heart health history in my family. My entire dad's side of the family has very, very bad heart health. And so for me, it was just like, that's, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you, Corry. That was such a wealth of information. So if anybody wants to ask her any questions individually, you can come up and ask. And if you guys want any refreshments, there's some water, some nuts, and some cheese platters, and some vegetables, some greens.
Yes,
There we go.
healthy stuff.
Some greens.